Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is 100 days in or 99 days, depending on how you count. We're actually going to, over here at Lincoln Square, we're going to have 200 days today and tomorrow, just to, so we can really dine out on it. Really excited to have Mike Sachs with us, who is running to win the New York 17th Congressional District. Everybody should follow him. Go to his campaign website. We'll get into that more. I've gotten to know Mike over the years. Has a really unique background, and let's start with your announcement video, which is pretty great stuff.
I'm gonna take you. Bermuda, Bahama, Greenland, come home to your mama.
That's our Congressman, Mike Lawler. While Donald Trump and Elon Musk close our Social Security office in the Hudson Valley, threaten Medicaid and Medicare for families, thousands of veterans have lost their jobs, and Donald Trump violates the Constitution daily. Instead of standing up for we, the people, Lawler's playing moderate up here while voting MAGA down there, rubber stamping this administration, thinking we won't notice. No matter how exhausted or angry we are, now is not the time to let our guard down. New Yorkers don't throw up our hands and give up. Right now, we have to fight, take action. Throughout my life, I've had a front row seat to how our politics has changed. Growing up, music was my life, and that same spirit took me to law school to become an attorney and a journalist working to expose the politicization of our Supreme Court. Eventually, it brought me to share the news in the Hudson Valley, where I lifted the curtain for our community about what's happening in Washington.
I'm Mike Sachs. Mike Sachs. Mike Sachs. Reporting outside the UN building. Mike Sachs.
Covering the devastation of the pandemic, the elimination of abortion rights, and the insurrection to destroy our democracy on January 6th. Now, I've always lived by this idea. The truth isn't dead if we don't let it die. That's why I've never been afraid of Donald Trump. In fact, I was one of the first reporters to call him out on his lies to his face.
It's objectively false.
And today, I'm a proud Westchester dad raising my two incredible boys. Their future and the country we leave them motivates me every single day. But now, we're in a moment that requires telling it like it is. Is housing more affordable? No. Is it easy to find a good paying job? It is not. And there's no telling how much damage is being caused to our democracy. So, what do Democrats do now? What's our next chapter? We can't do the same old thing with the same old people. Stand up for something, back it up, really fight for the middle class, protect our healthcare and our Social Security, rescue our republic from an aspiring autocrat. In Congress, I'll bring our bold ideas to save our democracy. And we need to do this now, before it's too late. I'm Mike Sachs. I'm running for Congress to tell you the truth, to fight for New York, and to unfuck our country.
Great stuff, man.
Really good.
Do you guys bleep on this, by the way? Like, if I said something, would you bleep it out?
No.
No. That's not a chance.
I don't think we do that. If so, Rick Wilson would not be allowed to ever do the show.
Yeah. So just in case anybody is new to the show, Joe Trippi there, legendary Democratic consultant, the guy when I was a Republican I hated to go against the most, who has come over to Lincoln Project and just tremendous help. So Mike, first, when is this primary?
The primary is not till June 2026. So
Right.
It's a long time until then, but it's a moment that right now we can't stop and we must seize to make sure that people around the country understand the moment we're in and who's there to meet this moment.
Yeah, listen, all the time that Joe and I did races, I never sat there on election night waiting for the returns thinking we started too early. So I think it's great that you're getting out now. The one thing that all campaigns have the same all this time, and it's how you use it. So what's the landscape of this race as you see it? You've got a heavily contested Democratic primary to go up against one of the worst congressmen, a district that Harris won, right? And he won it barely in 22. Kind of tell us what you see as the structure and architecture of the race and the stakes of the race and why you're running.
Yeah, well, first, guys, thanks for having me on. I've been a fan of both of yours for a very long time, and Stuart, I've been sliding into your DMs for years just to vomit my own thoughts at you as well. And like your book, it was all a lie, is pretty much the 95 theses of a Republican
It is.
campaign operative finally understanding that what went into what you were working to build was really just an effort to have plutocratic, theocratic, autocratic capture of a party so that no one else could hold power no matter what the people said. And that type of procession I had watched in my past career as a journalist, from covering the Supreme Court to Congress to campaigns in 2016 to the big picture all throughout as a local news reporter up here in New York. But before all that, you asked about this district. I've lived in this district. I live in northern Westchester.
Right.
It's New York 17. It encompasses the northern half of Westchester, across the Hudson River into Rockland County, and then north of Westchester in Putnam counties and a sliver of Dutchess County. It was traditionally New York 17, a pretty Democratic district. Nita Lowey held 17 for a very long time.
Right, I remember that. She was like an institution there, right?
Yeah, very much so. And then there was a big open primary in 2020. Mondaire Jones won that primary and went on to win the general election. And then in 2022, New York State had an independent commission to draw its lines, its districting lines. And North Carolina had done such an extreme partisan gerrymander that New York State's legislature overrode the Independent Districting Commission, so that at least in the aggregate, the popular will could be represented in the Congress. But then Republicans...
Which is probably why we have a Republican Congress now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I mean, that's often said. Do you agree with that made a big difference? That we would have...
Yeah, and that's all part of what I worked on over the years as a journalist, watching all of this being permitted, whether it was the Citizens United or the gutting the Voting Rights Act, the Supreme Court saying that states could permit, or that the Supreme Court had no power to police extreme partisan gerrymandering. That was all towards the mission of making sure that there's a heavy thumb on the scales for Republican electoral power, despite what the people said. And of course, as we saw with Trump, he took the false claims of voter fraud that started developing in the second George Bush administration, and Trumpified them into this pandemic panic that he weaponized for outright election subversion, when all of the methods of voter suppression failed to deliver him a popular electoral college vote in 2020. So it's all part of this whole same anti-democratic ecosystem by right-wing interests that have captured our government and is trying to prevent we the people from having our way in a representative democracy.
I think that's such an important part, because we tend to look at these as isolated incidents, and each individual one. There's some reluctance out there among, I think, a lot of political observers, a lot of the press, to look at this as a unified theory. And, on what used to be my side, we did see it as a unified theory. I mean, if you go back, the Federalist Society started as a weekend conference at Yale back in, like 84 something, with some benign title like, "What's the future of the conservative judiciary?" Yeah. And they were very patient, and now it's very difficult to say that they didn't win.
Yeah.
But I think that totality of it, and this is something Joe has talked about a lot too.
One of the things I wanted to get at is, because you have voices out there saying, "Hey, let's be quiet. Let's let them implode. Let's, play dead." We've been saying, no, it's no time to play dead. It's time to get loud. And that's why I really love your candidate, fell in love with your candidacy. I'm so glad to hear that you were running, because that's not, you're running with. So the question is, in a swing district like this, how do you intend to go at it?
Yeah. All right. And I recognize that I didn't quite finish Stuart's question also. But I can answer them all in one fell swoop, because what I was saying before, all this talk about the totality of where we are right now in this anti-democratic moment. That's why I said when I meant it, we need to unfuck our country. And the way to get there is to understand just how fucked we are and what it takes to get out of this. Right? So going back to this district was redistricted in a way by a special master in the New York's High Court that was meant really pretty much to put a thumb back on the scales for Republicans. And Mike Lawler stepped into that breach in 2022 and was able to capitalize on fears of crime, even though this is the safest district in the country, pretty much, and capitalize on the fact that this district was no longer what it once was, and get into power in 2022, and then position himself as some moderate. That's how he won, playing moderate up here while voting MAGA down there.
Right.
But for a couple of years under Biden, he was able to say, well, he's just, a split ticket kind of guy. And perhaps that's why he won in 2024 as well, when Harris carried this district for the presidency. Because people who perhaps were voting for him but voting for Harris maybe thought, she might have some excesses of wokeness, and we'll need a Republican House, or at least a Republican representative, to rein that in. But what have we gotten instead since then? Since he won re-election, we've gotten 100 days of a Trump administration destroying free speech, ripping away due process, targeting unpopular people, so that he can then chip away at our Constitution and let us and making a bet that we can just cheer on because we don't like those people he's picking on. That is deeply, deeply corrosive for our democracy and for our constitutional republic. And Lawler, what's he doing? Nothing. And in this district, he could actually do something, and he wouldn't pay a penalty for it from the public who's elected him. He could stand up to Trump and say, no, we're going to pass a law. I'm going to join with the Democrats, and we're not going to let the tariffs happen. I'm going to stand up, and we're going to do some investigation on what actually is waste, fraud, and abuse, instead of letting Doge take a chainsaw to a whole bunch of bullshit that hurts people. Instead, he's letting it all happen because, well, who's filling his war chests, right? What does he actually believe in? And it doesn't seem from anything he ever says that he really believes in much, let alone the people of this district. So, Joe, you asked what the path is. And Stuart, you asked what the landscape is like, right? Right here, this district is the epicenter of where the path to the House for Democrats leads. This is it. Win this district, Democrats. I don't just mean capital D, party Democrats, but Democrats, people who believe in democracy, can retake the House, which is the one chamber of the one branch of our federal government that those who want to make sure that we emerge from this dark moment, this creeping autocracy of the Trump years, where the mask is off, the gloves are off, and he's doing everything he can to maintain power and keep power in perpetuity, no matter what the people think and want. This is the one place, the House, where Democrats can say, this is what we stand for. We're going to have aggressive oversight over the past 2 years, 25 to 27, of the corruption, the criminality of the first half of the second Trump administration. Use inherent contempt authority to get Elon Musk and lock him up in the House until he's able to answer the questions that he might not even know because he is just an asshole with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Right? And then put forward a legislative package that isn't just a laundry list of, what Democrats would ordinarily do in this discrete list of things, but instead understand that it's a vision. Think Gingrich's Contract with America, but not stupid and evil. Think about an agenda in which Americans can see the House pass under this overarching understanding of what we can be as a country if we are in it together, and give people hope for what can come after MAGA when we vanquish it. And that can lead to an election of a Democrat, again, both small and big D Democrat, which are frankly coextensive in a concentric circle right now.
Yeah.
And for the White House in 28. And when the Senate map finally is copacetic, then get a Senate in there. But then understand this. This is going all the way, right? Whether you want to restore reproductive freedom that the Supreme Court stole away, whether we want to strengthen voting rights that the Supreme Court has chipped away at, whether we want to strengthen the social safety net, expand the social safety net in ways that are popular, that people want. You've also got to nuke the filibuster, because already Republicans represent a minority of Americans when they hold the majority in the Senate. And now we're going to have an extra minority blocking the people's will in an already unrepresentative body. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, the Supreme Court dares make up new shit to block it and declare Democrats unconstitutional because they were put in place and assembled by Mitch McConnell and the Federalist Society and Leonard Leo's money to be the last bastion of Republican power and perpetuation. Should all the other fail-safes give way, then you got to do something about that. But all along that way, what's to be understood is this. And this is something that Democrats and liberals and progressives have forgotten over the years. They've forgotten that when the people speak, when we ratify our rights, Republicans repeal those popular policies at their peril. Think Social Security and the New Deal. Think the Great Society with Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, Medicare, Medicaid, Fair Housing Act. Even think Obamacare. Each of those things that the people ratify, that the people put into law. Republicans know that they cannot repeal those things lest they get thrown out of office. So they outsource it to unelected judges to do their dirty work to strike these things down, or they try to trim the sails or cut Medicaid, from which Lawler is looking to do as well with the rest of the Republicans, and under a sense of entitlement reform and keeping solvency and pointing the fingers at weak and vulnerable people who they're saying are frauds when the massive corporations, the billionaires, are actually making off like bandits the entire time. But those are people paying the Republicans there to keep that going. Focus on those things. And you get popular policies that Republicans dare repeal at their peril. And what will they do if they try that? They'll be thrown out of office.
So, Mike, can we get into the town hall that just
we sure can.
Yeah. I'd like to get your take on that on that after you quench some thirst there. Let's get into that. What happened with Lawler's town hall? I mean, how'd that go over?
Yeah, so it didn't go over well. It was a shit show. It was just an outpouring of anger and dismay at a man that people are tired of lying to them. And the dam's that's broken up here. People are seeing it now. Yeah, people recognize that this person has not been level with them all along. And they're demanding answers from him. And he cannot give them. And it's almost comical how hemmed in he is. How much power he actually holds in the Congress that he's refusing to use for the good of this district. And he's being called out on it. And we've seen video clips of this, all the boos and his trying to make himself sound reasonable when he's just giving non-answers. Yeah. It's astonishing. And this is the first of 4 he has scheduled all throughout the 4 different counties in our district.
You think
this was in Rockland County, his home county in Rockland County, hoping that his people would turn out. And it was a high school auditorium full of not his people. That ticket thing. People could get them.
The idea you have a town hall and you have a big crowd is extraordinary in itself.
Yeah.
As someone who's, at the last minute tried to build those crowds.
Do you think he does the other 3? Do you think he actually goes through with it?
Well, there's one scheduled up here in Westchester for this coming weekend. He had moved venues, so saying he needed a bigger venue. I'm not sure if that's because he was looking to bust in a lot more of his supporters when the other one filled up with his not supporters. But ultimately, this town hall was the result of the town hall movement we've been seeing during Trump's first 100 days. Think about it this way: okay, you saw my video, you see the title of this, "Unfucking America," right? So when I was thinking about getting in the race, and I was thinking about where we are and what's needed to get out of where we are, and how my understanding as a former political legal journalist, my training as a lawyer, my understanding of our democracy and how public policy plays into perpetuating and making better our country. I was looking around and thinking, what happened on November 5th? And all the news reports about that. People said, fuck this shit, I'm out. Again, this guy, he tried to overturn an election and he's back. I'm going to attend to my community, my family, my synagogue, my church, but no more marching. Fuck this shit, I'm out. But since then, shit's gotten really fucked up. Really, really bad. And only going to get worse. People who voted for him thinking that prices of eggs were going to go down and the good economy would finally reach and get them and help them because they weren't seeing it with Biden. They're going to get hurt more. The economy is tanking because he's tanking it on purpose. And these everyday pocketbook issues, from prices of cost of living to housing prices to price of eggs, they're not going down. And he's chainsawing jobs for veterans, healthcare, for people who who rely on it, all for sport and power consolidation to rob us to make his billionaire best friends richer. People are going to feel that here. So while shit's getting really fucked up, we now need to see and say, as we're now seeing these town halls, collectively, unfuck this shit. We are in. We need to go from this atomized resignation and channel our anger to collective action. And what you're seeing in these town halls, what you saw in other districts that were redder, and people showing up and holding their representatives to account for laying down and letting Trump roll over them and steal the people's power, the purse, their voice. their money and houses wholesale from the People's House to the White House. People are standing up saying no more of this. And you had these Republican representatives who just had to escape because they didn't know how to answer these people who were pissed off. And that was within, 30 days of this administration?
Yeah.
Now we're at 100 days. And Lawler, we've been clamoring for him. Come up and talk to us. Face your voters, dude. We've had faux town halls where he was invited, but there was literally a straw man on stage because he didn't want to show up, where people spoke what they were feeling and how much they were being hurt by this Trump administration slashing and pausing and cutting unconstitutionally of federal funds. So now Lawler says, fine, I recognize this moment requires I be there, lest I keep getting cut and hurt by the press I'm getting. So he shows up, but he's in a bind because what can he do? He either crosses the dear leader, which he will not do. He defends, denies, and deflects from everything the dear leader does. So he tries not to let it stick to him. He goes on TV where he once was the darling moderate and no one's believing him anymore. So he thinks he can have a captive audience in front of him in this high school auditorium, and that they won't push back and demand answers. So yeah, this was a crazy shit show on his home turf in Rockland County, which is pretty red. Pretty red. It's his home turf. This is hometown. And Rocklandites came out and shouted him and demanded accountability, and he would give none. So now he's going to come to Westchester if he dares. He's going to come to Dutchess if he dares. He's going to come to Putnam if he dares. And we'll see what happens in each of those. But he's seen now his constituency expects something more of him, and he's not going to give it. So there needs to be someone else who steps up, who can meet this moment and has the vision to understand what the People's House can be if we just speak with one voice and push our policies out forward.
Yeah, I think that there's a sort of an inevitability of what's happening here with Republicans, that they made a deal with the devil. And when people forget about Faustus, not only does he not deliver, or Mephistopheles not only does not deliver, he also takes your soul. And it's just an untenable position. You see this in these red districts, like you're saying. I mean, it used to be that you could run for office, particularly in the South, these poorer states, based on how much money you could get out of Washington. Bring home the bacon, all of this, right. All the earmarks, all of this. And in theory, people might say they want spending, but they love this stuff. And I just, all of this for a tax cut for billionaires, it's really, I don't know anything that is better off now than it was 100 days ago. And that's why you have with these numbers, every president in modern history, except for Trump, has been more popular after 100 days than they were on election day, which makes sense. It's like a very American thing. I want to give the guy a chance. I didn't vote for him. But Trump was lower in 2017, and he's lower now, which means that people voted for him and have lost faith in him or developed a negative view, which is pretty extraordinary in 100 days.
And Joe, I'm going to let you talk, but I hear 100 days, and that first metric came out from FDR, right? Yeah. FDR came in with his first 100 days, but he had a mandate, a huge mandate out of the cataclysm of a Republican-made Great Depression. Let's also remember that when Republicans are in power, people get hurt and the economy crashes.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the whole Doge thing and the cuts to cutting education, cutting NIH, cutting the FDA, all of it, and it turns out today, I think it was on I think NBC. Maybe CBS, who did an investigation into it. It turns out spending's up $220 billion in the first 100 days of the Trump administration. It's actually increased $220 billion. All the damage that's been done, all the people that were fired, all the people that were fired and rehired, all of it. The people will die because of some of the stuff. These cuts, yeah, they are.
4-year-old cancer patient citizens being de facto denaturalized because Trump wants to do an end run around courts blocking his executive order stripping citizenship from people from people who have it by birth. Like, this is what's going on, and it's just astonishing, right? And what I'm saying, there's no mandate for it, none. He got a plurality of the presidential vote, and he can't even get his own trifecta Congress. to pass the laws he'd want passed, because he doesn't trust that he could get it done. So, and also it's his agenda, frankly, and Russ Vought and Mark Paoletta and the people behind the curtain is their agenda to consolidate executive power so that they never have to leave power once Congress cedes it to them. Right. So it's all this stuff all together, and they're hurting people. They're deliberately hurting people, many of whom voted for him and are hoping that just because, let's think about you read the Semaphore article about the Mark Andreessen's signal chats, which are, that's the billionaire version of the national security signal chats that hopefully will bring down Hegseth. But all for what? That Andreessen wants his tax cuts and just to be an asshole? That's why these people poured money into getting this guy in office. Their portfolios are taking a cut, but they think it's worth it because, again, they want tax cuts and they want to be assholes.
And they want to run everything. I mean,
they want to run everything.
Yeah, they want to impose what their view of the future. And by the way, you're seeing what their view of the future will bring us, but they want to impose it and take power, and they don't really care what it costs them right now and what it costs the American people and how many people are hurt or die or are harmed by it.
They can afford it. They have health insurance. They have their 401ks that however far they go down, they will still be higher than the rest of ours combined. And we've all watched as these billionaires bought, not just been handed, but bought this responsibility to govern, not by the people, but by Trump. They're all in it together. We all need to be in this together to get out of this very moment and get our country to a track where we can be proud of it. And it serves everyone, not just our own party, not just our own personalist loyalists who have to beg the dear leader for permission to get things back on track, but for all of us.
So, Mike, we can't let you go without asking about the Supreme Court. I mean, you've covered the Supreme Court. Your background is as a legal reporter. How do you see this playing out? Do you think that there's any reason to be hopeful about the court? How are these signs that supposedly, Roberts is sending, like the 1 a.m. ruling? What do you think?
All right. So remember, it's the Supreme Court that put Trump in office. Citizens United and its progeny is what allowed Musk to spend untold, unlimited expenditures to put Trump back in office and gain a back seat, if not the front seat in the Oval Office. And then the Roberts Court's own project to weaken voting rights and to perpetuate Republican power, as John Roberts sees fit, because he sees himself as the steward of the party, the responsible one. Those rulings, and then the ruling gutting the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause that let Trump get back on the ballot, and then the ruling that also gutted Congress's power, and the federal government's power to enact the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause. And then Trump v. US, which just said, hey, you can be a king. Why not? Be a king. Cool. We're gonna shut down the prosecutions, and you can just before the election, you can be a king. Go for it. So this Supreme Court put him in office. Right? So what happens when you put a leopard back in the White House, and that leopard is anti-constitutional? And some things are coextensive with what the right-wing legal movement wants. They're going to do some things that the movement has long wanted. The gutting of independent executive agencies like the FTC, the NLRB, maybe even the Fed. Right? That the Supreme Court will go along with that. They'll go along with some funding freezes here and there. But yeah, what happens if Trump does things that the majority of the Supreme Court, the three Democrat-believing Democrats, democracy-believing Democrats, Roberts, Barrett, maybe Kavanaugh, I don't know. What happens if they stand up and say, sorry, you can't strip birthright citizenship from Americans who are born here? Sorry, you cannot impound federal funds unilaterally. You need to go through Congress. What happens when the Supreme Court says that? So this is the dilemma that the Roberts Court now finds itself in. It either becomes it either has to be a rubber stamp for Trump, so to preserve some semblance of future independence, or it stands up to Trump, and Trump says, sorry, I don't care, and it robs the judiciary forever of the illusion of its power that just comes from its legitimacy. That's it, from its word. Neither has the sword nor the purse. That's the dilemma that the court has put itself in. And so if that confrontation happens between Chief Justice Roberts and President Trump, who said, again, thank you for very much for what you've done at the State of the Union, or the quasi-State of the Union. They will bring down each other and the rest of the country with them. We need to remember that. So we have these frontline judges, the district court judges, some appeals judges, including J. Harvey Wilkinson, who I think, like you, Stuart, is very much of the type of Republican that you were before you saw it was all a lie. Standing up to Trump, saying no more, none of this, because of clear constitutional violations that Trump is deliberately violating because he thinks he has the mandate to remake our constitutional order the way that FDR had emerging from the Great Depression. He has no such mandate. None. Doesn't have overwhelming numbers in Congress for him, doesn't have his own overwhelming electoral mandate for himself. None. But they're pushing ahead because they want to rework our entire constitutional order to lock themselves in power no matter what the people say. And for that, they might have the Supreme Court with them. But until then, they're going to enter a death spiral and try to bring us all down with them. And we need to recognize that part of the effort of taking back the House is to be the very place where this understanding gets emanated outward. And when we get control of the elected branches, get a trifecta, and we push something out to the court, that this court knows it cannot stand in the way of constitutional laws, can't make shit up just to keep their own power and keep their own veto check as the main policymaking and breaking body in this country.
Yeah, I can't think of a more consequential off-year election, in modern history.
And each off-year election, like each one has been the most consequential. And the stakes, but the stakes keep getting higher because
it's not going to stop in 2026. We will have to continue this fight because they're not going to go away. Even if we crush them in 2026, they're going to keep coming back.
And what happens if Trump tries to run again? But what if he can't? There is no one with the charisma to command his cult of personality once he's gone.
Yeah.
So what is this movement going to do when it realizes that it probably can't get the popular vote again because again, when Republicans are in power, people hate them. They hate them because people get hurt by them and they get thrown out. Then people might forget and bring them back in. But when they're in power, they hate them. So what is the people who helped put Trump back in power this time and who are organizing this consolidation of power into the executive branch now? What are they up to? Knowing that when the worm turns, liberals and Democrats will have that consolidated power. They don't want that to happen. So are they expecting to let that happen? What happens then when Trump is gone and there's no one to command his cult of personality? How do they stay in power? And that is what I'm very afraid of as well. And we need to shine a light on that and make sure there's at least one chamber in one branch of the federal government that's screaming this from the rooftops, that shines a light on it and shows a way out from this criminality and corruption of this moment. And that's why I'm running for Congress.
Well, look, Mike, you got to come back to. We got to talk more about this. But everybody, or go, Joe. Go.
Yeah, no. I was just going to I want to extend this in the fairness of equal time and all other good stuff that they've already pushed away, and extend an invitation to Lawler to come on the strategy session where Stuart and I can, and maybe Rick can ask a few questions.
And one thing that's important, guys, because we've talked about 2024 and the lessons to learn from 2024, but this is going to be an entirely different election.
Yeah.
Again, because Republicans hold all the power and they're hurting people with it, just straight up hurting people with it. But above and beyond that, all the bread and butter issues, the kitchen table issues that were definitive, they were deciding in this past election. Those still matter, and they matter here in this district. But they're connected also to the autocracy, because again, what is happening? People are consolidating power. The billionaires are consolidating power to keep themselves and make themselves richer at our expense. They are stealing from us, from our health care, from our pocketbooks, from our housing, from our cost of living. They're stealing from us to make themselves richer. And they're trying to hold on to power to make sure we never get ourselves better off, while saying that they will help us. Proof is not there. They're hurting us.
Everybody who's watching this is going to want to support you. What's the best way to support you, Mike?
Go to MikeSacksForCongress.com. You can see how it's spelled there in the Chiron with a K, not an H, MikeSacks.forCongress.com. And please donate what you can. Looking to get a lot of grassroots behind this, looking to make sure that this candidacy not only gets the eyeballs and ears and attention of anyone who will listen. Thank you guys for having me on. But also gets your support so that it can remain a viable candidacy to go the long haul through this 14-month primary process right now, and shows this district and the country what can be if we are able to will it. So thank you guys for having me on.
No,
Mike Sachs for
thanks,
Congress.com.
man.
I'd
I
love
think
all of your support.
it just feels this is going to be a passion election, and the
Yeah.
candidates who are going to win are the candidates that have real passion.
Well,
And
I
you
I
do.
think you saw it.
I mean,
Yeah, you do. And
This guys, this is
this
how
is
I am. Like
can't
Stuart,
buy-
you've seen me in your
yeah,
DMs for
I know,
years.
man,
Like,
you can't. It's like they say, you can't coach speed. You can't coach passion.
Yeah.
Because if it's fake, people just see right through it.
yeah.
And then it's worse than if you even tried.
yeah,
This is how I talk to my children. This is why 2 days before this past election, they said, "Daddy, you should run for Congress." They actually said, like, I didn't plant that in them. This is
Yeah.
not some apocrypha. They said, "Daddy, you should run for Congress." And I hadn't told them that I'd been thinking about this for some time. I was hoping that, when they were grown, maybe if the moment presented itself. But
Yeah.
then they told me they thought it'd be cool. And I was completely overwhelmed with this notion of having to make sure that we can see our way out of this,
Yeah.
out of this moment. So
Yeah.
they were happy when I told them I was
Listen,
we need more like you, man. We need more
yeah,
out there
yeah.
like you.
I love you, brother. We got to have you back. And
anytime.
thanks everybody for watching. I think there's universal consensus. There's a crisis in media, right came out of media. And that's why we see these alternatives like Lincoln Square developing. And, we don't have any billionaires. So if there's any billionaires watching who'd like to join us and support us, we're open to it. It's really up to everybody out there. So please subscribe. If you can become a paid member, that's incredibly helpful. We're putting these messages out there. Joe Trippi's podcast, The Trippi Show. Tomorrow night, we have Maya May's show, Punching Up. And if you haven't seen Maya May, she's a total. So you've got to go on her show. I would pay money to see you and Maya together. This would be fabulous. And the Lincoln Project podcast and Rick Wilson's Enemies List. So everybody, it's only up to us. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
We need to build a new house from the wreckage of the rubble that Trump and Lawler are leaving us. So join us, MikeSachsForCongress.com.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.